Hi, I'm Miles, 32, older brother, only son, the responsible one when my parents felt like delegating, and the difficult one when I said no. The story starts in my grandmother's dining room, because of course it does. There were Tolbos on the chairs, a tower of cupcakes, and a collage of grandma through the decades, curated with disturbing precision by Aunt Bev. My sister Laya breezed in 30 minutes late with her kids in matching polos, like we were all here to audition for a commercial. The room tilted toward them like sunflowers. Make room for the golden ones. Bev sang, "The future of this family." I was already at the kids' table. My mom said the main table needed balance, whatever that meant. Grandma waved a hand at me. "Miles, you're by the outlet. Perfect for your little pod show." "My podcast," I muttered. Dad clapped me on the shoulder like I just won a ribbon for participation. "Hey, at least he's got a hobby." Then the first punch landed. Then the first. Laya leaned over the main table, kissed Grandma's cheek, and said loudly, "We came straight from the tutor. 2 hours of Latin. And don't even ask what that camp cost." Pause for dramatic effect. $8,500 for 4 weeks, worth every penny for their college track. Everyone made those gasping approval noises, the kind people make when they plan to gossip about the number in the car. Mom nodded solemnly, and thank heavens for the college fund. Your grandfather had such foresight. "Our college fund," Laya corrected, grinning. "The trust, remember?" She winked at Grandma. "The way you flaunted that at dinner is iconic." Grandma laughed like a bell. "I do like to remind you children of your blessings." I check my phone like I always do when I'm angry, pretending I needed the weather, when really I needed not to throw a fork. Uncle Rob turned to me. "Miles, what's new with your episodes?" "Interviews," I said. He nodded like I'd confirmed a diagnosis. "You should do one on parents who don't save for college. Thankfully, this family knows better." My mom raised her wine. Thankfully, she looked at me when she said it, like gratitude had a face, and it wasn't mine. I stared at the banner that said Happy 78th, Queen, and tried not to think about the folder on my laptop labeled Trust Final. Laya's kids were nice enough, but I was tired of being treated like the intern of the family, tired of being the backup plan, the tech help, the emotional vault they forgot to close. Then Grandma lifted her glass. "To family," she said, "and to the grandchildren we invest in." A pause, a smile. That was my line, the one I'd been hearing in my head since I was 12. "Invest in the ones who matter." Mom laughed. "Here, here." I pushed my chair back. "Grandma," I said as calmly as I could manage, "about the trust." "Not now, sweetie," she said, voice sugared. "Let's not talk money at dinner." Laya smirked. "We can talk later." You wouldn't understand the details anyway." I swallowed. "You'd be surprised. 12 years ago, when my grandfather was still alive and hadn't yet decided that my value was inversely proportional to my paycheck, he opened an educational trust for the grandchildren. At the time, that meant me and some hypothetical future cousins. Then Laya had kids, and suddenly the word grandchildren became a brand with a logo, a mission statement, and a full-time marketing team. My family loves a good myth. Grandpa sacrificed for education. Grandma handpicked private schools like wine bottles. The trust was legend, untouchable, sacred, a relic of fiscal virtue, trotted out at birthdays, holidays, and any dinner where I had the gall to ask for help. "Ask your grandfather about the fund." Mom would sigh when I wanted soccer cleats. He'd chuckle, change the subject, and I'd go mow another lawn. By college, I was taking barista shifts between editing freelance audio jobs in the dead of night. My family never called it grit. They called it Miles being Miles. Meanwhile, Laya, 2 years younger, fan favorite since birth, had mastered the art of weaponized charm. "Miles is just so intense," she'd say. "He should have fun." Fun had a price tag. I had rent. When she had her first kid, the trust got louder. "Our golden grandbaby," Grandma would coo. "We set up a fund for education, of course." She'd say that last part like it was revolutionary, like she'd invented 529s. The problem was, the education part got blurry. Tutors, ski weekends, robotics camps, sailing. One year, I overheard her say, "They must learn to navigate." I thought she meant life. She meant actual yachts. Last year, Laya posted a photo of the kids with their new tutor, 2 hours a week. "Worth every penny," she wrote. "College path secured." Grandma replied with 8 clapping emojis. Then, "So glad we set up their trust young." I stared at that message like it owed me money. Typed, "Wasn't the trust for all the grandchildren?" 3 dots. Then, "Mom, stop stirring." Laya wrote, "You don't even have kids," Grandma added. "We're talking about actual grandchildren, dear." Actual grandchildren. Cool. I didn't scream. I didn't respond. I opened the trust documents, pulled from the drawer where I keep old warranties and proof I still had hope once. Co-beneficiaries, Miles and Laya. Purpose, post-secondary tuition and related academic costs. Trustee, Grandma. Successor clause may be invoked in the event of mismanagement. I looked at the camp invoices, the enrichment packages, the birthday learning cruises. I checked the trust balance, the disbursement logs, the account names. Then I made a folder, Trust Drafts. Because I didn't want revenge. I wanted rules. Grandpa's funeral was tasteful, quiet, more buffet than grief. I remember standing beside the cookie table, wondering if the oatmeal raisin was a metaphor. Looked like chocolate chip. Tasted like disappointment. 6 months later, the trust woke up. Grandma called Laya's daughter our investment during a brunch and followed it with, "The tutor says she's gifted." Gifted became a brand. Camp for the gifted. The gifted don't do public school. Every new bill came with a brag and a blessing. One invoice literally said enrichment series, elite developmental tier. Meanwhile, I was still paying interest on my own degree and Venmo requesting my dad for a birthday dinner he forgot he promised. I finally called the estate lawyer. I asked one question. If the trust was used for non-academic enrichment, does that count as mismanagement? He paused, then said carefully, "It depends. Enrichment isn't the same as post-secondary tuition. Arguably." That word again, arguably. Would a court argue? I asked. If you cared to argue, he said, shrugging, you'd have a case. I started building one. Not to sue. God, no. I just wanted the rules followed. So I tracked disbursements, collected statements, took screenshots of group chat posts where Laya joked about trust-funded ski slopes. The clause was clear. If mismanagement could be demonstrated, the beneficiaries could appoint a new trustee. Grandma's control wasn't untouchable. It just felt that way. I read trust law like it was a new genre of horror. I hired a financial consultant, paid her out of my own pocket. She confirmed what I suspected. The trust had been bled for years. Private tutors, language apps, educational cruises. Somewhere in there, I stopped being the bitter one. I became the adult in the room. I filed paperwork, sent notice, appointed myself successor trustee. It was all perfectly legal, just extremely unwelcome. I planned to tell the family quietly, calmly, with coffee and bullet points. Then Grandma's birthday came around, tulle bows on the chairs, cupcakes stacked like a wedding, gift bags with gold foil tags that read, "Investing in Legacy." At 2:15, Laya stood to announce the kids' summer recital. "The camp says they're excelling," she beamed. "Tuition went up, but it's worth it." Grandma dabbed at her eyes. "And we'll always make sure they have what they need." Mom leaned toward me and stage whispered, "Miles, you didn't forget Grandma's check, did you? Even a small one would show appreciation." Dad added, "No one likes a tally keeper." I set down my spoon. "About the tally," I said quietly. Forks froze. Grandma glanced over. "Miles, not now." I turned my phone screen toward her. She looked, blinked, focused. The bank's confirmation email, my name, the word trustee. Her smile fell like a curtain. "What is this?" she asked. I kept my voice steady. "The trust had a successor clause. Misuse triggers it. The bank reviewed the expenses. The lawyer filed notice. Effective last week, I'm the trustee." Laya laughed. "You don't even have kids. You wouldn't know what a child needs if it bit you." "The trust isn't for enrichment," I said. "It's for college, tuition, books." Grandma stood up so fast her chair screamed across the floor. "How dare you?" Conversation stopped. A fork dropped. Somewhere a child whispered, "Uh-oh." Dad's voice dropped to that warning pitch. "Miles, fix this." Mom's eyes narrowed like knives. "After everything we've done for you," Laya pointed, "you're stealing from my children." I kept my hands under the table so no one would see them shaking. "No one's stealing. The trust is intact. College costs will be approved and paid directly, but no more $8,500 camps." And then, from the far end of the table, my Aunt Joy, the quiet one, the one who never speaks unless a child's bleeding, set down her glass and said one sentence. Why were the statements hidden? The silence that followed Aunt Joy's sentence had mass. It didn't just hang in the air, it crushed it. Grandma blinked. "Excuse me?" Joy calmly folded her napkin like she wasn't detonating the room. "I asked for trust statements when I co-signed Laya's preschool deposit. You told me it wasn't public information." She looked around the table like she was offering a second chance for someone, anyone, to step in. No one did. "That's when I realized you weren't tracking it properly," Joy said, tone steady. "So yes, I asked why the statements were hidden." Laya spun on her. "Joy, not helpful." Joy didn't flinch. Helpful would have been following the rules. A glass hit the table too hard. One of the kids slid down in his seat, clearly hoping to disappear into the upholstery. Grandma's voice returned, jagged now. "I did what was best." "For whom?" I asked. She turned that shaking finger on me. "You have always resented them." I kept my gaze on the table, on the placemat with a golden quote about legacy. I resent being erased. That's different. Dad stood up. Give it back. It's not a piggy bank, I said. It's a trust, and I'm tired of being treated like a threat just because I know how to read the fine print. Aunt Bev whispered, "Is this even legal?" "It's more than legal," I said. "It's what Grandpa intended." "He would be ashamed," Grandma hissed. "Then he should have made the rules clearer," I said. But he didn't, so I followed them. Laya's oldest kid, 12, nervous, trying to act invisible, glanced up at me. I met his eyes for just a second. He looked away fast, but not before I caught it. That flash of confusion, like he was trying to do the math. I wasn't mad at them. I never was. This wasn't about punishing children. It was about telling the truth when everyone else had made lying look noble. Laya's voice cracked. "So what now? You'll decide what they get." "No," I said. "The trust will. Books, tuition, approved. Luxury camps, no." "Out of spite?" Mom asked. "Out of policy." I pulled a one-pager from my bag. Yep, printed, because I knew how this was going to go, and slid it toward the center of the table. New oversight plan, definitions, parameters, quarterly reporting, copies to both beneficiaries. Grandma looked at it like it was a forged will. "We are family," she said softly. "We do not need contracts." "We never had contracts," I said. "We had a hierarchy." Joy nodded, quiet but firm, and we never questioned it. Until now. I stood. "I'll approve expenses that meet the criteria. I'll send quarterly updates. I'll be transparent. You won't have to trust me. You'll just have to trust the rules." Behind me, someone muttered, "He sounds like a politician." I didn't turn around. I just walked out. Not stormed, not flounced. Walked. Straight backed. Hands shaking. I made it to my car before I exhaled. And when I did, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But underneath the exhaustion, a strange quiet was taking shape. It sounded like self-respect. The group chat exploded that night like someone had thrown gasoline on a birthday candle. First, "Laya, you've humiliated us. The kids are crying. Hope you're happy." Then, "Mom, this family survives on loyalty. You clearly want no part of that." Then Dad, privately, "Call me, man to man. Let's fix this." I didn't call. I wrote an email. 3 paragraphs. Polite, factual, edited within an inch of its emotional life. Attached, a PDF of the trust, the successor clause, highlighted, the bank's confirmation letter, a list of disallowed expenses, and one conciliatory note at the end. To minimize impact on the kids, I'll cover the current tutoring invoice personally. Moving forward, only post-secondary education expenses will be honored. Thank you. Leia replied in less than a minute, "Keep your blood money." Joy, in a private message, "Proud of you. First non-crazy decision in this family since 2004. 3 days passed. Then came the voicemail. "Grandma, 5 full minutes of disappointment, delivered like a sermon. You've betrayed your family. You're acting like a stranger. You'll regret this when you have your own, when you finally understand what it means to put children first." She never said, "I love you." She never asked why. She never admitted the trust wasn't just a fund. It was a narrative, and I'd broken it. I stared at the voicemail sitting on my desk like a sticky note made of guilt and generational trauma. Then I opened my banking app and did something unremarkable. I paid off a student loan. No screenshot, no announcement. Just clicked submit and closed the tab. The next podcast episode was about boundary budgets. How do you allocate money and attention when your family treats every limit like a betrayal? It hit. The inbox flooded. One woman wrote, "My brother used our grandma's medical fund to buy a jet ski. You gave me the courage to finally say no." Another, "I cried through the episode. My mom guilt trips me for not funding my nephew's coding boot camp. I make $42,000 a year. I cried too. Twice. Muted the mic both times. Kept going. By the end of the week, the episode charted. A sponsor extended. My part-time editor sent confetti emojis. I bought her lunch and didn't even think about the receipt." Somewhere in all that, Dad texted again. "Coffee? Just talk." I said yes, because there are some conversations you don't take at home. We met at a diner, beige walls, bottomless refills, the kind of place where big truths feel smaller. He slid into the booth, already bracing for civility. "Your grandmother is upset," he said. I noticed. He stirred sugar into coffee he didn't drink. "She feels disrespected." I moved the trust under the clause. It's all documented. I know. He tried to smile. "Maybe we could come to an agreement. You step down. We put Laya back in. Co-signers. You get to feel respected." That word again, feel. "Dad," I said, keeping my voice low, "the trust has rules. I'm just following them." He leaned back. "You sound like your podcast." "Thanks. That's not an insult." He looked tired. "Your grandmother's afraid of losing face." Losing track and losing face aren't the same thing. He looked at me long. I don't recognize you lately. I smiled. I finally recognize myself. The new normal didn't arrive like a sunrise. It showed up like a canceled flight. There were still holidays. I just wasn't invited to most of them. Or if I was, the messages came late, vague, and always paired with a, "We figured you'd be busy anyway." I didn't fight it. I sent polite no thank yous, kept my voice even, my replies professional. When tuition came due for Laya's oldest, I wired the payment directly to the university bursar and CC'd Laya, my parents, and grandma. No note, no commentary, no flourish, just a transaction ID and a remaining balance. Laya replied with one word, "Fine. In our family, that's a peace treaty." It was almost peaceful for a week. Then grandma went nuclear. She asked her church group to pray for her wayward grandson. Aunt Bev texted me a meme of a wooden spoon with the caption, "Old school parenting never failed." Mom dropped off a cake at my door, white frosting, pink cursive. Family first. It had melted slightly in the sun and looked like something a horror movie would feature just before a knife scene. I took a photo, ate one corner out of spite, threw the rest away. My therapist asked how I was sleeping. "Better?" I said, like I took off a coat I didn't know I'd been wearing since high school. One morning, I woke up to a text from Nate, my cousin, quiet, shy. Background character in most family photos. Nate, "Hey, I heard what you did with the trust. I asked my parents about my 529. Turns out, there isn't one." He sent a second message. "I'm not dumping this on you, just hearing you say no gave me permission to ask. I'm opening my own account, even if it's $50 a month." I sent him my budgeting spreadsheet. He sent me a picture of his dog in a sweater. It was the best family conversation I'd had in a decade. Weeks passed. The sound of fallout softened. The group chat rebranded into Family Core with me quietly removed. I kept paying what the trust allowed. Tuition, books, registration fees. When the enrichment invoice arrived, coding camp again. I declined reimbursement. Leia screenshot the email and texted me, "Monster." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. I'd already said no the only way this family ever listens. In writing, legally, publicly. Then the weirdest thing happened. The show got quietly bigger. Not viral. Not explosive. Just steadily unrespected. Listeners started writing in. I thought I was crazy for not buying my niece's laptop. My dad guilted me for not co-signing a loan. I replayed your episode twice. Every time I hit publish, I felt lighter. Like this version of me, the one with rules, with limits, with backbone, was finally hosting not just the podcast, but his actual life. The first time Grandma texted after the blow-up, it was a single sentence. "If you insist on playing banker, at least visit." I waited 2 days before replying. Saturday at 2, no emoji, no guilt, just logistics. She made tea like it was a peace offering and didn't apologize once. We sat in her floral living room, surrounded by frames of Laya's kids in matching sweaters, all professionally staged like a real estate listing for genetic success. She poured Earl Grey with a tremble I pretended not to see. "You hurt me," she said. "You embarrassed me," I replied. "Is that what you wanted? Revenge?" "No," I said, carefully. "I wanted fairness." She tapped her teaspoon against the saucer like she was thinking. "Fairness is not the same as love." "I know," I said. "That's why I chose fairness. Love gets confused in this family." She gave me a long, hard look, the kind that tries to age you backwards into obedience. "You are so sure of yourself." "I'm sure about this." "What, do you think you're better than us?" "I think I'm allowed to be equal." She looked away, blinked, changed the subject to hydrangeas. We talked about flowers for 10 minutes like we were in a hostage negotiation with politeness as the only weapon. When I left, she kissed my cheek out of habit. Her lips were cold. I sat in my car for a full minute before starting the engine. The thing about surviving a confrontation with someone who's always believed they hold the moral high ground is, you don't feel victorious. You feel vacuumed. I used to think drawing a line meant conflict. Now I knew it means clarity. That visit marked something. Not a truce, not forgiveness, but a shift. I wasn't the villain anymore. I was something worse. Unyielding, which in our family was indistinguishable from betrayal. The next time tuition was due, I sent the payment again. No comment, no note. Laya replied, "Thanks," just that. And in our family, that was a paragraph. I kept doing what I always did, recording, editing, refusing to fund prestige fencing classes. And then one Thursday morning, I opened my inbox to find a message from a listener I didn't recognize. I told my brother I'm not his bank anymore. I put it in writing. I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. Thank you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I made coffee, sat down at my mic, and hit record. That final episode of the season was called The Price of Peace, because that's what it had always cost me. For years, I paid in silence, in letting comments slide, in in being the one who never needed anything, in deferring, laughing it off, and being told I was intense when I wasn't even allowed to be serious. I started the episode with this line: setting a boundary doesn't make you hard, it makes you honest. And I told the whole story, not with names, not with drama, just the facts, the structure, the mismanagement clause, the trust purpose. The moment I stopped auditioning for actual grandchild and started reading the documents everyone else quoted but never followed, the inbox filled up again. A teacher in Oregon said she'd stopped paying her nephew's private school fees after her sister called her a selfish spinster. A divorced dad in Florida said he hadn't told anyone he'd been covering his younger brother's rent for 2 years. Until last week, when he said no. A college student sent a voice memo just saying, "Thank you. I didn't know I was allowed to ask why." Somewhere in there, Laya stopped texting insults. She didn't apologize, but she sent me a forwarded email from the university with a class schedule attached. Just a subject line, FYI, which in our family meant, I'm not speaking to you, but I'm using the trust like I'm supposed to. It was enough. I still wasn't invited to Grandma's next birthday. Joy texted me a picture of the cupcakes. One was labeled Legacy. I laughed so hard I startled myself. Dad left a voicemail I haven't listened to yet. Mom sent a group text that read, "We miss you, but not the drama." I didn't reply, because silence can be a boundary too. What changed? I stopped treating peace like my job. I stopped financing other people's performance of Legacy. I paid what was owed. I documented what was said. I said no to $8,500 camps and yes to a tuition deposit that made an actual future possible. Laya may never forgive me. Grandma may never smile at me the same way again. That's not a tragedy. That's a recalibration. The truth doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks like paperwork. Sometimes it sounds like someone yelling at a birthday party. Sometimes it's a cake melting on your porch with the words "family first" slouching into frosting mush. And sometimes it's a stranger riding from a time zone away to say, "I said no, and I finally slept." That's the ending. Not the party, not the scream, not the group chat fallout. It's the sleep. The silence. The small space in your life that used to be taken up by guilt and is now filled with oxygen. I'm not the villain. I'm not the backup plan. I'm not the ATM. I'm just a person who read the rules and decided to follow them, even when the room wanted a different story.